You were actually committed to Texas Tech, right, for a
I
while.
was, yeah.
And Coach Leach, and RIP to him, by the way, one of my favorite people in the sport. But and then Alabama came in late, and you mentioned Tebow earlier. Alabama, I believe, in that class, if I'm not mistaken, in '07, yeah, that was Tim's class. Shula sort of went the distance with him, and even though it was probably always Florida, and then they kind of circled back on you. So that was kind of an interesting recruitment as well. A lot of people, you're synonymous with the Saban era, but a lot of people make it lost on them that Mike Shula is actually the one that spotted you and signed you at Alabama.
He was, and it was an interesting. So Tim and Mike Shula, and I always appreciated this about Mike, is he was very transparent throughout the entire process. He said, we are offering one guy. We don't have to have a quarterback. We have 4 on scholarship right now, but we're going to offer one guy, and that guy's going to be Tim Tebow. And if he decides to come here, then obviously no quarterbacks will be taken beyond that. But if he decides to go elsewhere, we're going to reevaluate things. At that point, I was committed to Texas Tech early in the process, probably week 3 of my senior season. Only started 1 year in high school, backed up Chase Daniel, who went on to finish runner up or third in the Heisman at Missouri, and is still in the NFL, amazingly enough. So backed him up. So I didn't really get to play a lot until my senior year. Before I started my senior year, though, before I ever started a game, and this was a weird time because it didn't happen like this, I still had 10 scholarship offers because Chase would go play baseball and I would get a lion's share of the reps in the spring. And they're like, who's this number 17? He's pretty good. So I ended up getting offers from a lot of smaller schools, the Rices of the world, SMU, Baylor. Baylor at the time was not good. They were probably, of the teams that offered me, they were probably the worst team, which is crazy what they inevitably became. But that was the Guy Morris era, and they were like 1-11 in a good year. But Phil Bennett was at SMU. He offered me. TCU offered me early. Coach, I still have so much appreciation for Coach Patterson and taking a chance on me early on. BYU offered, Kansas offered. So it was a bunch of kind of smaller schools. But ultimately, I'd always said, I'm going to make a decision because I don't want to be thinking about the recruiting process. I'm going to make one early. Texas Tech at the time was the best available. I committed Texas Tech over North Carolina there in my 3rd week of my senior year. And then at the end of the year, after we won the state championship, I kind of reassessed everything, took my visits, and ultimately decided the best place for me was Alabama. It just aligned with what I wanted from a college experience. Now, at that point, did I think a national championship was within reach? I think I would have told you as an 18-year-old, yes. But if I were to say, your life depends on winning a national championship, I would have said, all right, that's probably pretty unlikely. But I knew we had a good class. Of the guys we signed in that class, I think we signed like 22 or 23 guys. Like 10 or 12 had won state championships in high school. And to me, I wanted to be aligned with winners. And I resonated with that class probably as much as anywhere else I took a visit. Took a visit to Colorado. At that point, they were pretty dang good. And Dan Hawkins was coming down from Boise. I had known Dan for a long time. Took a visit to Ole Miss. Ed Ogeron was the head coach there at that time. I took a visit to North Carolina. Honestly, North Carolina was right there in the mix, and then had taken a couple other unofficials to kind of evaluate the whole process. Tennessee.
Was it Butch at Carolina at that time?
He didn't get there at that time. It was right before
Bunting.
Butch. Bunting.
Bunting. Oh, wow.
Yep. So it was weird, though, to me because they got shelled. The game that I took my visit to go see them, they got shelled, and all the guys were like, all right, we're still going to go out. Y'all want to go out? I'm like, y'all just got beat. I'd be crying into my pillow. Like, this doesn't align with me. Like, I want to win,
Right.
Like if we lose, like I'm going and I'm like thinking about, don't jump off the cliff. Like, that's just how I approached it. In high school, we went 63-1. So, Bama was the best place for me. And ultimately when Saban got there, it was warp speed all the way to the top of college football. And it was just really fun to see things change the way it did.